Netflix on the screen, healthcare in between, physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive, blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need bridge blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix, Maybrick's got the fix. Complex subjects make
right
clear
now
every episode
in ways that we actually acquire
leads the way,
and ways that make me more efficient.
in the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBits Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming.
Hey, welcome to the MedBits Webcast. I got a different scene in the background. Do you see that? I'm in a different city of Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta, city of Atlanta right now. Okay, but anyway, this is my hometown. I've been here a long time, for 30 years. I started my career here, so Atlanta is my hometown actually. So I went on the way here. I went to the American College of Cardiology conference in Chicago. It is in Chicago in the McCormick Center. It's a huge, very well-known center. We have American College of Cardiology. All the cardiologists from around the world come down and talk about diagnosis, therapies, new diagnostic equipment, new therapies, all those things, new medicines. All of them, they get together and talk about it in a lot of big conference. I attended that one. So we had a great. I'm a part of the association called American Association of Physicians of Indian origin. We have 6,000 cardiologists from India practicing in the United States. I'm an active member. I'm not a physician, but I'm a member, and I'm really helping try to help the organization. The founder of that organization is Dr. Naveen Nanda, is a close friend of mine. Heart disease is the biggest number one disease. Okay, that is a really challenging. But we did a lot of advances. Dr. Nanda is a pioneer in this area. So I'm going to show you just briefly about the picture. We had a fun in this one. Let me add the scene for you here. Let me add the scene for you. That's I'm going to get you. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get you this video. Oh yeah. Okay. I hope it plays. Okay, that's good. That is a. Let me take it out. Then let me come back. Um, okay, so that was a place in Chicago. We had a great time and fun. I'm going to talk about more. I interviewed the doctors and founders. So heart disease is number one, but the second biggest disease is that mysterious stills. Heart we made a lot of advances in heart disease. We really understood a lot of about heart disease, a lot more. But in the cancer, the second deadly disease, we have no, we don't have much understanding. We're struggling. We spend a billions of dollars, if not trillion dollars. It's a huge investment went through NIH all over the world. They spend a lot of money on the cancer treatment and cancer research. But unfortunately, or we didn't crack the origin, the real holy grail of the cancer. We just peripherals. We know some of the things we understood some extent, but the biggest challenge is cancer is still a puzzling disease in my view. So how do you if the grants are $1 trillion grants going to NIH from NIH to universities and then pharmaceutical companies, there are still we have not got any bigger outcomes. This is Einstein used to say, when if you keep on trying the old things and don't expect new things, anything new results. So we need to try to do something different. So we need to fund small startups, small cancer startups. In the that maybe 1,000 companies, they give $1 million each. Maybe they find something, because by using AI and quantum computers, they may find some solutions. So pioneer in this work, who is leading this kind of a startup cancer system, is Roger Royce. Of all the people in the world, is an attorney. Is a tax attorney. Is a startup basic class attorney from Silicon Valley. Very veteran attorney. Is a good friend of mine. Let him welcome. Let me bring him to the main stage. Welcome, Roger. Roger, welcome to the. How did you get this involvement in the? Tell me a little bit background of yours, and then tell me why you were so much interested in the cancer startups.
Okay, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about tonight until just now, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We can run with that. So my name's Roger Royce. I'm a partner with Haynes Boone in Palo Alto. We're an AmLaw 100 law firm, and I do emerging growth and venture capital. That's startup companies, and that's formation, financing, and M&A exit. And as you know from my prior appearances, I have a background with agriculture technology startups. About 10 or 15 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago, I started a community called Silicon Valley AgTech. I come from an agricultural area. I have a lot of tech company clients. They were creating solutions to solve problems in food production and distribution. And that's how I got very interested and involved in that. More recently, I've become very interested and involved in oncology technology. And these are the startup companies that are solving the problem of cancer specifically. And you're absolutely right, Romano, when you say this is startup land. The large pharmaceutical companies are working on, let's be honest, they're driven by profits and they're risk averse. And they are driven on making the incremental improvements that don't really create tremendous amount of risk, but will justify the tremendous amount of money that has to go into them, mostly just trying to get through the FDA approval processes to get to market and get the product out in the hands of the consumers. Well, if you have shareholders to report to, like they all do, they're publicly held companies, you're not going to be very excited about swinging for the fences and taking big risks and placing big bets. That's what startups do. And this is an area that needs to be disrupted like no other that anyone has ever seen before. It is an area, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, let's just be honest. What we have is not working, okay? This problem is not getting, we're making incremental improvements, not the big improvements that we need to see. I was looking at the stats from the American Cancer Society the other day, and you can see, well, some cancers have gone down over the years, like lung cancer, because, who smokes anymore? Uh, Many other cancers have increased. Okay. Well, how can that be? How can the incidence and the death rate be increasing in this day and age? So, what we have now is not working. We need to do something different. What is that different thing? Well, I have seen so many technology companies now over the last 2, 3 years that have just game changing solutions and game changing technologies, pharmaceutical solutions, immunology, uh, uh, even mechanical solutions. So there are big things out there. There are big things out there, and I'm doing my best to try to get them to market.
So, what are the complexities involved in the things like scientific? It is a complex. Cancer is a complex disease. It is a heterogeneous kind of thing. So, it is a lot of failures at their high end R&D. That's why a lot of people are averse to investing. The regular investors, angel investors or traditional investors, they're kind of nervous about investing in the cancer startups. Where do you think you can get how can you attract this kind of investment from? Who are the people that we need to really address to?
Yeah, the venture community, the angel community, the affinity investors, typically that's family offices, all of the large uh, nonprofit organizations have a venture investing arm, not just in oncology, but in other areas, for example, which I also work with. So we're all coming together, and it is definitely happening. And the constraints here now are there's a lot of companies, and the constraints are getting them in front of the right investors, the affinity investors, and then of course the elephant in the room, of course, is the regulatory process
That
here
is,
in the United States in particular, because there are proven therapies out there now that you can get them in one of two ways. You can go to another country that doesn't have an FDA, or um, or you can try to get some sort of special exemption and find a care facility that will actually go beyond standard of care under maybe a clinical research program, clinical trial, right to try, something like that. And it's just a very cumbersome procedure. And I talk to these companies, and I see things that just blow me away. And I say, that is awesome. I say, when is that going to be available? Oh, 10 or 15 years. FDA will approve it maybe in that amount of time. And those are maybe the more extreme cases, but you get the idea. It's just a very expensive regulatory process here.
Roger, can you give me a couple of examples of these startups, like one or two examples, which one they come across to your table?
Yeah, God, just almost every day. So there's one. This is really fascinating, and I just read on LinkedIn today that they closed a funding, and I helped them as well by introducing them to some people that are very interested. But it's a group of young, smart guys from Harvard that came up with a stem cell therapy that it uses. So if you know what CAR T therapy is, this is very much in use in leukemia, lymphoma, and that's where it started. You basically re-engineer the T cells. The CAR is shimmering, so basically you re-engineer these T cells to be toxic to cancer cells, just at a super duper high level. Well, but it hasn't worked in solid tumors. Okay, well, here's some guys that said, you know what? We think with our gene splicing and our CRISPR technology, we can make that work in solid tumors. And in fact, we're going to go after the toughest one. We're going to start with glioblastoma. And early indications have been super promising. They did raise venture funding now. They were able to prove that much of the case. It's very exciting stuff, because if they crack that nut, that's a whole new world of therapies. And that's one of a million. I could go on for a long time about stuff I see that I get very excited about. Now we have to temper that excitement, because we've all been there before. We've seen, that magic pill that works super great on mice and then works on, tissue, outside in a test tube, and then it just doesn't work, in real life people. So, but I'm feeling good about that one in particular.
We have no other option because people are getting older, and the cancer is a biggest threat to the humanity itself. Even India and those countries we never saw seen cancers are growing up is growing a big time. So we have to really address this problem. Otherwise is a health catastrophe in making. In fact, that is. So I think governments all over the world should put some money for these startups and allocate some money rather than ignoring them. That's what my feeling is. But your let us talk about a little bit of. I came from agricultural state, in India. All I grew up in agriculture. Tell me, agriculture technology. You are very, very much into, not besides into cancer, this startups scene. You are also in agriculture technology. You do conferences in agriculture technology. A little bit go in that direction for a few minutes, couple of minutes.
I'm going to do that, but before I do, I want to say one last thing about this topic, because you just said something really interesting about the funding. Funding for cancer research is really under attack right now, federal funding anyway, and I think that fundamental research is absolutely essential in this field. Like I say, this is swing for the fences type stuff. We have to have game-changing stuff. We have to think about this in a different way. And it's pretty hard to find companies outside the startup space that are really able to do that. That's the function of government. It is one of the legitimate roles of government, is to fund things that private industry really cannot. It's not set up to do that. Specifically, there's a pancreatic cancer research program at the Department of Defense, which it's under what they call the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program. And in a recently passed continuing resolution in Congress and now through the Senate, and now it's law. Bottom line is pancreatic cancer research has zero federal funding under this Department of Defense program. Last year it had $15 million. This year it has zero. That's the wrong direction. We should not be going to zero. We shouldn't be going negative. We should be increasing the funding, because I'll tell you something, that particular cancer is increasing at a rate of about 1-2% per year, every year. So, when you've got a fire burning, a fire raging, you don't all of a sudden decide you're going to cut back on fire extinguishers, right? If anything, you're going to kind of build a few more of them. And this is the total lunacy that I think we've got going on in funding of cancer research right now. Okay, and I will get off my.
Let us talk about Let me talk about a little bit about that. Continuing a little bit about that. Let me ask you about the artificial intelligence, the role of artificial intelligence and quantum computers in the advancing the diagnosis and therapies in the cancer side. What do you think, as an attorney? What do you think you see the startups using the AI? You think there is a lot of good future ahead? I think the funding is. What do you think the funding can help in this direction for the AI companies?
Absolutely, and there's so many companies that are trying to solve what in other businesses are pretty basic problems, but in the medical business have not been solved yet. And we all know the big one, of course, is interoperability, the records, right? Like one hospital can't read the records that another hospital has on you, that another doctor has on you. And I've seen so many companies trying to build tools and then go one step beyond that and say, well, okay, what can we glean from all these records? Let's use AI. And another step beyond that saying, let's have the patient enter data throughout the day, or maybe we pick it up through biometric markers and see if that tells us anything. And we are getting there bit by bit, more and more. I'm wearing, as you know, an Oura ring. You probably heard of these. I've got a Whoop, and all of these are bit by bit. They're using tools sort of like that. In other words, my Oura ring will let me know when something's wrong before I even feel it, right? It'll tell me. My Whoop will do the same thing. And so that's a step in the right direction. And I'm seeing a lot of companies, using really good, solid, both AI tools at all steps, diagnosis, treatment, drug discovery, at all steps in the process. AI is really playing a dominant role. Now, it's not good enough yet, I don't think, but it will be someday. We just got to keep working on it.
I have a dear friend joining with me from Atlanta. She's been a friend for a long time. She is a doctor of consciousness studies, showed Ursula Lentini. So she has some comments about she comes across a lot of cancer patients, a lot of cancer. This is the kind of thing she comes across the families. So she wants to ask questions and some comments on it. Go ahead, Ursula. Any questions for Roger, and then you can make some comments on it. Can you hear me? She's frozen.
Her screen's frozen. Well, while
Yeah.
we're waiting, let me just say another thing. I think, and this goes way beyond what I do for a living, but I can't help but come to some conclusions.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of companies that are really way at the back end solving the disease after it's occurred. But there are another group of companies that are more focused on health, wellness, and longevity that I consider under the umbrella of health tech that I work with. And the philosophy is that, look, it's the best way to deal with chronic illness is to not get sick, right? So what can we do to not get sick? What can we do to reduce the odds of that happening? And there are a lot of companies that are creating tools that are going to help people do that. I suspect your friend, Dr. Ursula, probably speaks to wellness as well.
Speaks to
improve our general health.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, go ahead. I think she's having some problem with the technology. Go ahead. You just keep talking.
Well, hey, that's a dangerous thing to say to a lawyer. Well, jump in when you want. I want to talk more about some of the cancer tech, oncology tech.
I am into this. In India, there is a state called Punjab. Because they're exposed to a lot of agricultural pesticides, there's a huge burst of huge cancer systems came out. And then there is a train full of these cancer patients go from one state to other state for the cancer treatment. This train is full of cancer patients across the India. They go. It is a really horrible scene to see. This is kind of what is causing the food. They let me bring Ursula. Has a lot of comments about it. Ursula, are you there? I don't know where is she.
I'm here now. I'm on my phone. As soon as I came on, I was there. And then anyway,
yeah.
Mr. Royce, I'm so glad that we're not alone, because I've been in the space of alternative medicine, and, we're shouting and screaming from the rooftops. But doctors who come up with cures disappear. They're shut down, they're threatened, they have to go under the radar, and they're afraid to tell that they've discovered a cure for cancer. It's happened for decades, and you're absolutely right. You already know, if we can get rid of the things that cause cancer, then we're going to be really fighting the system. I just recently found out that the cigarette companies, who you just said who smokes anymore, who are profiting handsomely, have moved to the food industry to make sure that the addiction chemicals that they were using in cigarettes are now in foods. And those are the things that are causing the cancer. We all know that 100 years ago, when we were eating farm fresh food and going to people's houses for dinner, eating handmade food, people that didn't even know what cancer was. So we can point to the food and say yes, and the carcinogens in the food compared to the European countries that don't even allow our garbage in their food is obviously the cause. So when we look at our country and say, how can the food industry poison our children specifically because they're weakening the immune system, not promote breastfeeding, which completely boosts the immune system. And then, we can't fight about it. Parents and families can't fight about it. So when we can address things in that direction, the other direction, which is the same direction, if somebody has cancer, they could go on a raw food, they could go on an extreme cleanse, they can do infrared treatments, there's natural things that are mistletoe, there's all kinds of natural things that are available. It's if the cancer's caught soon enough that, it can be affected when it's into big tumors. So what do you think about everything I just shared?
Well, you said a mouthful. So, but so the one thing, so let's take a few of your points, because you really did say a lot there. So number one, the environmental stuff. I mean, speaking of AI, I've been sitting here forever now on AI because it'll just occur to me that's the cause of cancer, and I type into AI, show me the trend in first, like high fructose corn syrup and cancer. Almost, but we can't just pin it on that because that's actually gone down the last 20 years. Okay, how about sugar? No, not quite a perfect correlation. Obesity is a pretty close correlation. But what is the one? Is it microplastics? Is it the antibiotics? Is it the hormones in the meat? What the heck is it? Something's causing this. And you may be right. It might be highly processed foods. And it's interesting that you use that example because there's been a lawsuit filed against all of the big food companies now, using the exact same legal theories that were used against the tobacco companies 20 years ago when they all start getting sued for putting dangerous products into the market. And you can see that really changed the tobacco industry, and it changed public's perception of them and how we work. And that whole kind of thing is happening now with food companies. Same claims. And the plaintiff is a fellow. In fact, I think he's from your neck of the woods there, who's a type 2 diabetic. And he said, "Look, you guys turned me into a diabetic." He says, "You knew this was going to happen, and you marketed this to me, and we haven't even talked about what they do to the children. This is an adult saying, you should have known, you should have warned me, you should have let me do this." So we'll see how that case turns out. But you can see that there definitely is a focus, a bullseye on food. Now, I don't want to say that's the one cause because, like, cancer is a complex set of diseases. It's like you said, Ramona, it's heterogeneous. But I will say that I have an app for that. I have an app that tracks my carbs every day, and I think you'd have to be awfully reckless these days if you're on a processed carb diet or on a high sugar diet anymore. And again, there's technologies that are out there now that will help you monitor that. There are blood sugar monitors, glucose monitors, that will help you monitor that and let you know what you can eat and what you can't eat. So again, I'm always like an optimist and a big believer in tech. And I think what we're going to find out, Dr. Ursula, is that there's a lot of contributors. I just listened to a podcast, and I think you're right. I think our food system is probably the number one biggest thing. But I don't think we can discount microplastics, mold, lots of other stuff, chemicals. And there's a growing body of evidence now that the coronavirus is itself an oncovirus, a weak oncovirus, kind of like HPV and hepatitis and some of the others. And we'll see, we'll see.
But Roger, that you're involved with the agriculture technology, right? So what
Yeah.
in agriculture technology can help in this direction to do really
Oh,
simplify the process?
there's absolutely overlap. I know where you're going with this. The carrot and my family was in the produce business, right? So the carrot that my parents would sell 50 years ago, it's not the same carrot you're buying in a store today, right? It doesn't have the same nutritional value. And well, why is that? And that's a soil health issue. And for the last 10 years, I've been looking at companies focused on the problem of soil health and maybe hydroponic or aquaponic, which is the latest big thing, but not so late, but it's a big thing. But there are natural, take the pesticides, the chemicals out of the ground and start using more natural types of pesticides. So that I think that's part of it. I think it's just the quality of our food has just changed so much over the years.
Ursula, that the thing is that Roger is a very active in the cancer startup scene. I didn't know whether you're watching that.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah. So I think what do you think of the mental health play a role in the dealing with this kind of a complex disease?
Yeah.
Well, again, this is not, well, a couple things. Number one, there are a lot of startups aimed at that too, right? that have apps that will try to help you with mindfulness and meditation and measure your mood and track different things. And so as part of my involvement in the community, I have occasion to talk to a lot of cancer patients. And in fact, just today, sadly, I just returned from a funeral of a good friend of mine named Lynn Williams, who died from breast cancer after she fought it for a good 7 years. But eventually, as Norm Macdonald would say, they fought it to a draw, I guess. So that's unfortunate. But I've talked to a lot of cancer patients, and I find that you find, and I'm looking for that magic bullet. Like, what is it that gives you such a better outcome than somebody else? And I haven't been able to find any magic pill, but what I did find that's kind of common among the people who survive the longest is a good mental outlook and a good mental attitude. And I am the least superstitious person you will ever meet in your life, but I've come to believe that mental state has a tremendous amount to do with this.
Yeah, let Ursula comment before that. I just want to make one comment. Your daughter gave you J. Krishnamurti's book, and
Yes.
she asked me about that. I'm glad she gave you that book. And J. Krishnamurti wrote that book. He's from my home state, and he is a very pioneer in the spiritual master, the philosopher. He was working with the quantum physicist David Bohm. He's really interesting. So go ahead, Virusula. You have a lot of experience in dealing with this cancer patients with the mental health. Just make a comment or any question. Both.
Yeah, so in my metaphysical movement, that we have targeted resentment as one of the primary emotional states that are cancer causing. So when people come in, they come to me to do the subconscious healing, and we go through. And there's a lot of grievance in the past and all of that. Each organ would also represent different fear and anxiety and stress and grief. So depending on the organ and the relationship to the emotional state is where we address things. And I've helped cancer patients turn around from the emotional components that are cancer causing. But if, let's just say, stress. So the American Medical Association has admitted that stress is a very big cause of all diseases because, again, our immune system is very low because of stress. So when we talk about meditation and spending more time in nature, spending more time with actual human beings instead of on our cell phones, that all boosts our immune system and the happiness factor. When we have something to live for, then people really want to fight. So sometimes people are like, well, I'm sick and, who cares? And then, of course, they're on their way out. When cancer patients come to me and they say, this is not going to beat me. I need to stay alive. I'm a mother. I'm important. Those are the people who survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Stress is so underappreciated as a causative factor. And we have to be able to deal with stress. What I found though is different people have different strategies for that, and different things work differently for different people. I think it's hard to say there's a one size fit all, and I'll just leave it at that. But I'm with stress.
Let me ask you a question, both of you. That you're trying to say that is an individual thing. Stress is a response to. But what about the systemic stress? Society is giving a lot of stress. Governments are giving stress. The financial systems, all those are putting so much stress on people. What do you think? How can we do there's a bigger wash and boiling changes we can do with this kind of a stress systems? Roger, you're in the policy making a little bit. Tell us.
No, that's way beyond my pay grade. Life is stressful. I don't think, to your point, I don't think we're going to change. We're not going to remove all the environmental stress. I just don't think that's possible. But what we can do is we can change how we react to it, right? So you mentioned my daughter and I, debated J. Krishnamurti for a long time. But we also debated, Frankl and man's search for meaning. And one of his fundamental premises is that, look, you can't control what happens to you, maybe, but you can control how you react to it, right? You can control how you let it affect you. And his example was from the concentration camps in Germany. But I've always been very drawn to that sort of existential psychology philosophy, because it goes right to the heart of the big killer, which is stress. Now, for a materialist like me, what that means is the stress causes a cortisol reaction, which triggers adrenaline, which raises your blood sugar, which creates IGF growth factor, which tells the cancer cell, oh, you need to grow. You're in an environment where you should grow. That, to me, the pathway is right along those lines. There might be something else to it that I can't see, but that's clear. That we absolutely can see, in a lab under a microscope.
And if you hold on, so if you go to the same lab and say, what is the chemical response to a 20-second hug? What kind of serotonin, dopamine, immune boosting system happens when we spend 20 minutes outside in the sun? When we sit on the ground and just relax, what happens to our physical body? So in this outside stress world, we have to inner resource now. So what's making us happy? What is filling up our cup? So when the day comes along and takes from us, that we have something left at the end of the day. So each person, like you were saying, needs to find their own thing of happiness. Is it music? Is it dance? Is it other people? Is it relationship? Is it a little more sleep than 5 hours? Is it finding, farm fresh food? Is it fasting? Is it spending time in nature over the weekends? So it's very, very simple, because we've survived for thousands of years pre-technology and lived pretty healthily. But when we have this new disease that goes along with the cancer, all the inventions, we have to see, well, okay, if it wasn't there, let's go back to the simple things in life that really are meaningful. I've done a lot of hospice work, and the number one problem around dying is regret. So if we can create a regret-free lifestyle, then that would probably help with our immune system.
But that's let me ask the Roger to change his little hat, different hat, to put a startup attorney attorney. He is a very well-known attorney from Silicon Valley. He does advise a lot of startups. He wrote a book called 10,000 Startups, author of the book. So tell us a little bit about the book, and then let us talk about the startup. What is the investments? Because a lot of my audience are doctors, so that is, give me some what are they can invest and how they can invest, and then what are the tax benefits or all those things very well. So give us a little bit background about your different hat kind of a thing.
Yeah, so shifting gears. So 10,000 Startups, it's actually my second book on startup law, is just basically kind of like we're sitting here talking about health, so that people can take control of their own health and self-educate and understand what they should stay away from, and maybe what they should do more exercise, more outside maybe, and less alcohol and sugar. My book on startup law is a lot like that. I think startup entrepreneurs, they should have an idea of what they're getting into, and not rely 100% on their lawyer to make all their decisions for them, because it's going to turn out a lot better for them if they have a much clearer roadmap. And the book is really written for a way for the startup entrepreneur to understand the legal system that they're stepping into, both the opportunities and the pitfalls.
So let me bring that your maybe that I wanted to bring that presentation maybe that you did the. Let me bring that one.
Well, it's all tax. I mean, if you wanted to talk a little bit about, I think you mentioned earlier, you asked me about what do we expect to see in the tax world, and I did put together a few slides on that. If you'd like me to talk about that, I will. I don't know your audience. We were having such a wide discussion about health and immune systems, but whatever you like.
What is a dead on arrival book? I didn't know that you wrote this book. Go
Well,
ahead.
that was the first book. I wrote that 15 years ago or so, and it's a book about all the mistakes that I've seen startup companies make over the last 40 years. And it was, after writing that, somebody occurred to me and says, well, why don't you tell us, instead of telling us what not to do, why don't you tell us what we should do? So, so Dead on Arrival is about the companies that made big mistakes and failed when they should have been successful. 10,000 Startups about all the companies where you didn't hear about their big splashy mistakes because they did things right and they quietly avoided problems and went on to become successful.
Yeah, that is that's a very well-known book. A lot of people know about this book. So,
Well, I do.
so tell us the expired provisions. What is this
Well,
question?
so anyway, we've got we've got big changes underway in government on so many different levels, as you know, but one of them is going to be our tax system. And we have a set of tax provisions that were enacted in 2017 that were set to expire in the next couple of years. Some of them expired in 2024. And the reason being, it has to do with the way tax bills get passed and how they score them and figure out the revenue impact. So they sunset after 10 years, typically, a lot of provisions. And there is a battle going on in Congress right now because some people want to make these tax breaks that were given 10 years ago permanent, and some want to let them expire. Some have expired, but might be reenacted and enacted back into law. And here's three of the big ones that have already expired: bonus depreciation, some interest expense deductions, and capitalizing R&D, which is a huge deal here in Silicon Valley for tech companies. If you go to the next slide, I've got a list, and I just put a link from JCT. It's a government agency. It's a government publication that goes into great detail if you want to see which provisions are going to expire. There's a lot of them. There are individual income tax rates, low income tax rates. There's several energy tax credits. One that you might be interested in is a medical expense deduction could go back to 10% up from the current. In other words, people can deduct medical expenses in excess of 7.5% of their adjusted gross income. That's set to go back to 10. And then there's some other temporary provisions. Now, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. If you go to the next slide, what we ought to be thinking about is the big, beautiful tax bill that is going to be coming along. And it proposes to expand and continue tax cuts, big tax cuts, both at the individual and corporate level. But they're going to pay for that through spending cuts. And, programs like Medicaid and social services are up for grabs these days. I don't think they're going to go anywhere, but just keep in mind that is a debate that is going on, the idea to stimulate growth. A couple that you hear a lot about, if you go to the next slide.
Yeah. Let me ask you before you go to the next slide. These tariffs you're talking about, where is all this money coming from the tariffs? Are they going to invest in the manufacturing or what do you think the overall plan of these tariffs, money coming from the tariffs area?
Yeah, who knows? We all know about Liberation Day, and now we're under the tariffs. We saw what happened to the stock market. And as we all know, the theory behind the tariffs is that that's going to influence consumers to buy more American products, which will generate U.S. manufacturing, which will create U.S. jobs. I don't think the tariffs, who knows, they might be a revenue raiser because maybe people will continue to buy from foreign parts or foreign manufacturers and just end up paying the tariffs that go to the federal fisc. But that's not the intention, and that's not the purpose. And I kind of doubt that'll be the effect. But anyhow, that's all I'll say about tariffs. And again, way beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, Roger, I want to ask you a couple of questions, and probably you don't have the slide about that. A lot of doctors are interested in the convertible notes and safe notes. Just can you comment on that, both of them? What are the easier way to invest in the a channel for them, for the doctors to invest their son-in-law or their nephew, whoever it is, they want to invest. Can you give us a little bit of a background on the convertible notes and the safe note, both of them?
Well, yes. So if you, Mr. Physician, are the investor in the company, the company is going to give you probably not equity because that's very expensive. They're going to give you something that's very equity-like. It's either a note that will convert into equity down the road, or these days it's almost on the coast, on the West Coast especially, it's always a safe, simple agreement for future equity. And it's basically an instrument where you give the company the money now and they give you the stock later, at a time when we know the company is going to more likely to succeed, and it has a valuation and can price its equity and give you some benefit, maybe a low valuation for getting in early. That's the standard way of doing it. You want to take that as an investor to keep your costs down, keep it simple. You want to give that as a company for the exact same reasons. So that's how all the seed fundings, right up until the first, what we call a price round, get done these days.
And both of them safe. So these are all the instruments, financial instruments, are going to be valid in the new government now. The safe and convertible note that's safe in this present system. What do you think of that?
Nothing's going to change. And you raise kind of an interesting issue. The beauty of the post money safe, they call it, is that even though you're not going through all the trouble of giving voting stock to somebody, they still can take the position that what they have is what we call qualified small business stock. And qualified small business stock is stock issued by a business worth less $50 million in an active trader business. It's originally issued as a C corporation. Almost every startup meets all these requirements. And that means the investors in startups, they have this QSBS. Well, why do you want that? Because if you hold it for 5 years, sell it, you don't pay any federal tax on up to the greater of $10 million or 10 times your cost basis. That is a huge giveaway, zero federal tax. And I know venture capitalists that have moved to states with no state income tax like Texas, and all their income is QSBS, and they live in a tax haven in the United States. They pay zero tax to any state or federal agency. That's a huge giveaway, and nobody's talking about that. That's safe. We're talking about getting rid of carried interest. We're talking about the state tax deduction. We're talking about not taxing tips. We're talking about not taxing overtime. Nobody's talking about taxing QSBS. And every year that comes up and it never goes anywhere. This year it hasn't even entered the public dialogue.
So, if they wanted to talk with Roger Royse, that's a number, that's a telephone number, and his email address is very straightforward. He's a partner in the Roger Royse Haynes Boone, the very prestigious legal firm in Silicon Valley. So that is where you can reach him. Roger Royse, you just Google him, he's all over the place, everywhere he's there. So let me ask you, we started with a cancer. Let me bring it back, all this. Let me take this one out. So we all, that's all. Let me just me do this. Yeah. So Roger, what do you think we are all, struggling? The cancer startups, you are really evangelist for this. You're trying to do last 1 year. Every time there is a thing, so you're progressing about this kind of cancer startups. You're inviting a lot of people. And what do you think the doctors can do, or physicians, healthcare executives, hospitals can do to promote this kind of cancer startups?
Well, again, I think the best way to deal with cancer is not to get it. If you do get it, to catch it as early as possible. And then I want to circle back, something I've been wanting to say, and I keep forgetting, but I agree with Dr. Ursula 100% when she talks about protecting the immune system. I mean, it's really all we got. At the end of the day, that's the only thing that's standing between us and disease. And I would really like to see, I guess, in a perfect world. And by the way, I am not anti-doctor. I'm as pro-doctor as they come. I have so many friends that are doctors. My hat's off to you for doing what you do. Um, but I think the U.S. medical system is really designed to treat the disease instead of preventing the disease. And I really would like to see more doctors in a position, to say, hey, you might want to start thinking, about changing your diet before you become pre-diabetic or diabetic, or you might want to, think about, you know, balancing the right foods and meals and supplements before your immune system is so trashed that stuff starts to happen. And I don't think that really happens that much in America.
Yeah.
I want to say that the education system for the medical industry is not including anything else besides what they've been taught. So if someone comes in and says, I want to help people, health is really important to me, my family members have died, or my dad's a doctor, or whatever, they get in and there's one track, because alternative medicine, which is traditional historical medicine, is not taught there. So the best startup companies that I would love to see, people saying, okay, this is medicine, this is medication, and here's all the other ways that we can create health for ourselves, our families, our communities, our country. And I think that would be something, because there's such a need for it, and it's not really organized. It's pocketed. If you're diabetic here, if your propensity for that because of your culture is there, I think startup companies who have an organized system that says, here's what to do, here's the supplements to take, here's the lifestyle, here's the apps to keep you on track, here's how we can support you. I think people have a starving need for that, because the medical industry can't help that. And many doctors are looking for that. They're not being trained in that, but after their training, their formal training, they're getting other training to help their patients. I would be very happy to see a lot of startup companies helping the health system.
I wanted to add that to you, Ursula. A lot of doctors, oncologists particularly, taking the lifestyle medicine now. Their board certifications are just starting to do the lifestyle medicine. So they understood there is a lifestyle is involved in this cancer. A lot of oncologists actually doing the lifestyle medicine boards actually. But I think what is Roger is doing is really remarkable. That's we need a lawyer to do the really startups for the cancer, because we tried everything. We tried all the other methods, didn't work. So we need a really evangelist, and he's a firm believer in the startups. And then he is an ecosystem that he is trying to build the cancer startups. I think you are onto something, Roger. I think the whole world has to support you, and I think is the whole world needs it. So I'll let you do a final comment, Roger.
My final comment is I want to do a pitch for cancerpatientlab.org. I'm on the board, where we believe that informed and engaged patients get better outcomes. And we do weekly webinars. We have patients, we have oncologists, we have integrative doctors like yourself that come in and talk, scientists, researchers, startup entrepreneurs. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of kind of the really new, really interesting research. Secondly, my own website that I created, cancertherapystartups.com. You can take a look at 10-minute videos from a couple dozen, I guess, oncology tech companies that I've seen and I like. I got them all posted on the website. Um, um, think of it as a demo day, online. And then thirdly, the final thing in this space, together with my good friend Bob Carr from SV Link, we're going to go ahead and create an oncology tech conference here in Silicon Valley. Hopefully, we wanted to do it this summer, probably be next fall, here in Silicon Valley, where we're just going to try and bring the community together in a live venue and give these startups some panel exposure and some pitch exposure. So stay tuned.
So delightful to talk with you, Roger. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And Ursula, you're always, great advice you give. Roger, you're a treasure to the Silicon Valley and in the startup scene. I think we all need this kind of a help. A lot of doctors and all the physician the healthcare community needs person like you to be really a spokesperson for this kind of a big challenges. Thank you so much for joining. And if you want to hang around for a couple of minutes after the talk, after the podcast, you can talk. And then let me say goodbye, good night for all of you.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it